Our next topic we want to review, because we haven't done this since last week, 2 weeks ago, was 2 weeks ago, dividing polynomials, okay? So that's where we did long division, right? So we have 6x squared minus x plus 2 divided by 2x minus 3. So we're going to go ahead and set up for long division. I'll just go to this side. So we'll do 2x minus 3 divided into 6x squared minus x plus 2. Okay, so if you'll remember, we had steps for this as well, okay? Step 1, we were dividing the leaders, okay? Step 2 was then to multiply. Step 3 was to subtract. Step 4, you bring down the next term. And then step 5, you repeat until you can't. Okay, so step 1, divide the leaders. Okay, so this is the leading term on the outside, and this is my leading term on the inside. So I'm going to divide those. It's always the inside term divided by the outside one. Okay, so 6x squared divided by 2x. 6 divided by 2 is 3. And then if you have 2 x's on top and 1 on the bottom, right, x squared, we have 2 on top and 1 on the bottom. 1 can cancel out 1, leaving you just 1x, okay? So we get 3x is the first part of our answer. And then we're going to multiply. So 3x times 2x should give us what we started with, which was a 6x squared. And then 3x times a negative 3 gives us a negative 9x, okay? Step 3, we now need to subtract them, okay? So we're gonna say minus, and then minus a negative, right? And when you have minus a negative, it makes it a positive. So really, you're just changing the sign on both. 6x squared minus 6x squared canceled like we wanted. And then negative 1x plus 9x leaves us with 8x. Step 4, you bring down the next term. Okay. And then step 5, you repeat your steps. So we're back up to dividing our leaders, okay? So this is still my leader on the outside, but this is my new leader underneath my square root, right? So now we're doing 8x divided by 2x. X over x cancels out, and 8 divided by 2 is 4. And then we're going to multiply. So 4 times 2x is 8x, which is what we wanted. 4 times a negative 3 would be a negative 12. And we need to subtract, so we're going to change the sign of both. Positive becomes negative, and negative becomes positive, because minus a negative would have made that positive. Cancels, and 2 plus 12 is 14. So that is your remainder, okay? So your answer would be 3x plus 4 plus 14 divided by 2x minus 3, because it stays divided by this, okay? If it asked you, there's questions on the test that ask for the remainder, you just put 14, okay? Okay, one more example. So we're starting out dividing our leaders. Okay, so 4x cubed divided by x, right? And 4 divided by 1 is just 4. If you have 3 x's on top and 1 on the bottom, when you cancel out that 1, you're still left with 2, so then 4x squared. Okay, you always put that answer on top. That's the first part of your answer. And then you multiply it. 4x squared times x is a 4x cubed, and 4x squared times 3 is a positive 12x squared. We need to subtract, so we're going to change the sign on both. This becomes minus. So these cancel, and then 9x squared minus a 12x squared leaves us with a negative 3x squared. Bring down our minus 8x, okay? And now we have a new leader. We've canceled that one out, so this is our new leader. So a negative 3x squared divided by x leaves us with a negative 3. We have 2 x's on top and 1 on the bottom. leaves you just 1x. So we have a minus 3x. And then we multiply. So minus 3x times x is a negative 3x squared. Negative 3x times 3 is a negative 9x. But we have to change, or we have to subtract, which is going to change the sign of everything, because minus a negative makes a plus, minus a negative makes a plus. So these cancel. Negative 8x plus 9x leaves us with just 1x. And we bring down our plus 3. Okay. New leader, so x divided by x cancels out, just leaves you 1. X divided by x is 1. So we get a plus 1. And we multiply. 1 times x is x. 1 times 3 is 3. And we have to subtract, changing the sign on both. They both end up canceling. So this is just our answer. And then our remainder is 0. Okay? So if it asked you for the answer, you would put this. If it asked you for the remainder, you would put this. Okay? Okay, so I also want to divide one like this. Okay? You're basically doing it step by step, right? So we would divide this first term by the denominator, and then we would do the second term divided by the denominator. So we're looking at just this first term. Sorry, guys. We're doing 12 divided by 3, which is 4. Okay. X to the fifth divided by x squared. If you have 5 x's on top and 2 on bottom, that means 2 would cancel out 2, leaving you an x to the third. And then we have 3 y's on top with 2 on the bottom, leaving you just 1. Okay? Then we can do the other way. All right? So 3 divided by 3 is 1. Okay? So it's a positive 1. You don't have to put the 1. And then we're doing x's. So we have 3 x's on top, 2 on the bottom, which leaves you just 1x. And then if you have 2 y's on top, 2 y's on bottom, it's just 1. So we just end up with 1x. Okay, so this is something we just did last week, factoring 4 terms, but we do want to practice it, okay? So first thing you may want to do is put it in a small box so that you can see what you're working with, okay? But then we want to break it down into a big box. If you've gotten the hang of this, okay, and you can just look at each row and each column from this and see, okay, well, 3 and negative 12, their GCF, the largest number they're both divisible by is 3. X cubed and x squared means they have an x squared in common. And you can do it that way, go ahead. You can look at x and negative 4 and say their GCF is a 1. Then you're good. There's your first factor, okay? If you're not to this point yet, that's perfectly fine. We can break everything down, okay? So starting with our 3x cubed, x cubed means we have 3 x's. The only things that multiply to give me 3 would be just 1 times 3, right? Then we're looking at negative 12x squared. So our x squared means we have 2 x's. We know we're going to have a negative 1, okay? We can break this down to negative 1 and 12. 2 things that multiply to give me 12 could be 3 and 4. 3 is prime, and then 4 breaks down into 2 and 2. So negative 1 times 3 times 2 times 2. X is just x times 1, and then negative 4 would break down into negative 1 and 4, which is 2 and 2. The first thing I would do is check if there's a number other than 1 that they all have in common, okay? There's not. They don't all 4 have x's. They don't all 4 have 2's or 3's, so we don't have a GCF for the whole thing. So now we'd look at each row and each column. You can see for this row, they both have 2 x's, so we take out an x squared. They also both have a 3, so we take out our 3. okay? Then on this row, the only thing they have in common is just a 1. They don't both have a -1. Looks like I put a negative there, but I didn't. They just both have a 1, okay? Then for this column, they both have 1x, and they both just have a 1, so 1x. This column, they both have a -1. They also, so both have this -1, and they also both have 2 2's, okay? So if we're pulling out a -1, a 2, and another 2, -1 times 2 times 2 would give us a -4, okay? And then we can check our answer. -4 times 1 is a -4, which is what we got here. 3x squared times x would be a would be 3x squared. X times 1 is x, and -4 times the 3x squared would give us a -12x squared. Okay, so our answer is 3x squared plus 1 times x minus 4. The last thing, y'all seem to be doing really well with factoring trinomials lately. The one thing I do want to review is just ones with a GCF, okay? So let's look and see what 3, 6, and 9 are all divisible by. Okay, first thing I would notice is all 3 terms have an x. Okay, so I would know that they're all divisible by an x, right? They all have one x in common. And then let's look at 3, 6, and 9. Well, I like to start with the smallest one. The only thing that'll multiply to give me 3 is 1 times 3, right? So those are the only possible factors that they could all have in common, okay? Because these are only ones for 3. So if they all 3 had it in common, it could only be one of these. Well, you know 6, 2 times 3, and 3 times 3, okay? You also have 1 and 6 and 1 and 9, but the greatest one that they have in common is going to be 3. So our GCF would be a 3x. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide everything by 3x, and I'm going to put that 3x out front of my answer, okay, because I'm going to factor it out. So 3x cubed divided by 3x, if you need to write it off to the side, you can, that's perfectly fine. 3 divided by 3 is a 1, and if you have 3 x's on top and 1 on the bottom, it leaves you with 2. So we have 1x squared. Next we have 6x squared divided by 3x. 6x squared divided by 3x. 6 divided by 3 is 2. If you have 2 x's on top and 1 on the bottom, you're left with 1. And then we have a negative, don't forget the negative, negative 9x divided by 3x. X and x cancel. Negative 9 divided by 3 is a -3. Okay, so now we're just factoring this, but we have to leave our answer out front, right? So when I get my final answer, it's gonna look something like this. Please don't forget to leave your 3x out front. That's why I'm going ahead and I'm writing it down here, okay? So I'm gonna factor this. My a, because I'm just looking inside, is 1, b is 2, and c is a -3. So a times c, 1 times a -3 is a -3, and then my b is 2. So I get 1 times 3 multiplies to be 3. One of them has to be negative to multiply and give me a -3. When they add together, they stay positive, so my larger one needs to be the positive. So I get x minus 1 and x plus 3. I've got to go back and divide by my a, but since my a is 1, dividing by 1 wouldn't change anything. So your answer just stays like this. And that's it.